Midnight on Earth podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan. Hey everybody, we're back with another episode of Midnight on Earth. I'm your host, Jake Weaver, and we're here to bring you more knowledge, more lights, and more love. Well, we're going to have an incredible educational episode this week. We're going to learn about Sasha Shulgin, Alexander Sasha Shulgin, who is a psychedelic legend that left this world in 2014. Kind of a under the radar psychedelic legend in the vein of Terence McKenna and Timothy Leary, but yet maybe less talked about in the mainstream. You really have to dig a little bit. So we're going to learn more about him today. And of course, on our lecture episodes, we always have a guest. And our guest is our standard go-to guest, Brynn Anderson of Vinyl Force Herbs. How are you doing today, Brynn?
Great, Jake. Thanks for having me.
We're here again, and we're going to listen to this lecture. It's actually a few lectures. It's a lecture with him in 1996, and then a couple lectures that happened just before he left this dimension, checked out of his body. So it's going to be a cool little, spectrum, a broad spectrum of Shulgin's life. But before we do that, I need you to do something for me. Go to bluecobracbd.com, bluecobracbd.com, and there you will find Blue Cobra CBD oil, the highest quality CBD oil that is available for purchase, period. And why is that? Because it is the only CBD oil that has the proprietary HIT extraction method. This is a natural extraction method that was developed by a man named Howard Hitt, aka Big H, and it uses no chemicals, no solvents, no gases, nothing. It's 100% natural. None of those things are used in the extraction process of the CBD from the hemp, which goes into this oil, the Blue Cobra CBD oil. Normally, if you've been listening, you know that normally we have a Blue Cobra Midnight on Earth discount code for Blue Cobra CBD oil. But just like last week, if you were listening last week, we're still taking it a step further. Big H has seemingly gone on the road of wacky tobacco. He's taking the cannabis path, perhaps. I'm not sure what's going on really, because he's giving his stuff away for free, shipping included. You only have to do one thing to get a free bottle, shipping included, of the highest quality Blue Cobra CBD oil. All you have to do is one thing. You go to bluecobracbd.com, you look for the contact section, and there you find an email, and you email Howard Hitt directly, and you give him your shipping information, a valid shipping address, where you would like it sent, and he will send you one free bottle with the test results, shipping included. All you have to do is email him. And the email is bluecobracbd@gmail.com. That's bluecobracbd@gmail.com. The @ symbol, gmail.com. bluecobracbd@gmail.com. It's literally, he's giving money away. And you contact him, you send him your information, and he will mail this bottle out to you. Last week, I did say it was worldwide. Unfortunately, I have to backpedal on that one. I didn't realize I kind of made a mistake there. It's okay. If the international orders that came in, whatever came in during that time, is still valid, but we're just going to keep it in the continental 48 states. So the continental 48, if you're listening to this and you want a free bottle of Blue Cobra CBD oil, all you have to do is email Howard and you get a free bottle sent to you. Do that. Get your free bottle. Go to bluecobracbd.com. Email Howard, hit bluecobracbd@gmail.com and get your free bottle, people. Try this incredible 100% organic product using 100% Oregon grown organic hemp. Everything about it is organic. Everything about it is amazing. I use it daily, topically, internally. You can give it to pets. I mean, it has so many uses. It's the highest quality CBD oil that I've ever been exposed to. And I've been in the cannabis industry in that world before I was a podcast. Well, not before I was a podcaster, before I was a podcaster for this podcast. I tried to broker CBD isolate and distillate when that was a hot thing to do, and for a minute, especially here in cannabis land, the Northwest of America. So when you're done with that and you get your free bottle of Blue Cobra, which is so generous of Howard, can't believe he's doing that. You can also follow us on Instagram at midnight_on_earth. That's the address. You can go there, click the button that connects us. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Audible. There's so many now. Wherever you go, that's your personal favorite that you like. There should be a button that connects us, a follow button, a like button, whatever it is. Click that button so we're connected, so you know when that next episode premieres. And you know whatever we're doing. Do that for me. And of course, please tell a friend, someone you know that loves these type of podcasts and wants to hear about some deep psychedelic history of Sasha Shulgin, of course, his wonderful wife, Ann. MidnightOnEarth.com. Okay, so I told you about Blue Cobra. The social media shout out is out of the way. And now we're going to dive into these rare lectures. Brynn, are you ready for this?
I'm ready for this.
Do you know who Sasha Shulgin is? Are you familiar with him at all?
Yes, I am, but I'm excited to learn more because I don't have a lot of detail. Like you said, he's a little bit more of a rare figure. So yeah, I'm curious to learn more about him.
Yeah, PiHKAL, TiHKAL, he wrote those books, which he outlined a lot of certain analogs of various psychedelic compounds that were yet to be illegal. So
yeah, he's definitely done a lot of work in that area.
Yeah, a lot of work.
Sure.
Well, how about we read his bio?
Okay.
And here we
Sounds
go. Dr. Alexander Sasha Theodore Shulgin, or Shura, his friends called him, was an American chemist, pharmacologist, psychopharmacologist, and author. Over the span of 50 years, he created more new psychedelic drugs than any other person to date. Nearly 250 by his own accounts. Wow.
I've already learned something.
Shulgin also rediscovered the drug MDMA and established its use as a tool in clinical psychedelic therapy for a short time. Interesting. So that was probably before things started taking off again, like now. He has written 2 books detailing his endeavors, PiHKAL and TiHKAL, and also contributed numerous highly appraised chemical assays and studies throughout the years. Shulgin is best known for synthesizing the psychoactive drugs 2CT7, 2CB, oh, I know that one, 2CE, 2CI, I know that one, DOM, and hundreds of others. Due in part to Shulgin's extensive work in the field of psychedelic research and the rational drug design of psychedelic drugs, he has since been dubbed the godfather of psychedelics. Interesting. Prior to his 2010 health issues, Shulgin had been working on a series of N-alleated tryptamines, including 5-MeO-DALT and 5-MeO-MALT, like malt. So different kind of malt. On April 7th, 2014, Anne Shulgin, his wife, reported on Facebook that her husband had developed liver cancer. And in a May 31st update on Facebook, she said that although appearing frail, he seemed to be experiencing his last moments in peace and without pain. On June 2nd, 2014, Shulgin died at home in bed, surrounded by family, 15 days before his 89th birthday. Wow. Well, in this 21st century day and age, in 2021, we would say that was a long life, 89. In the future, they may say, oh man, he was only at his halfway point. We don't know yet. But yeah, that's his bio. Wow, incredible history. Have you tried any of those substances, Brynn, that he listed, the 2CB, 2CI?
I'm not.
I've tried 2 of those on the list. I've tried 2CB and 2CI. They're both really interesting, not very hallucinogenic, but just very serotonin boosting and just puts you in that dimension, but in a very functional way. So the first lecture we're going to listen to is an interview that Sasha Shulgin did in 1996 in Mexico with a journalist there. And they have a really, really amazing conversation. And it's a great way to introduce you to him and kind of get you in his frequency so you can feel what he was thinking in that time. It was in Palenque, and it's an incredible interview. So we're going to start there, and then we're going to go to some interviews that took place around 2013, maybe even in 2014, where we hear some really touching final thoughts towards the tail end of his life in this dimension. So that will be very sweet and amazing to listen to at that time. And as we usually do in these lecture episodes, we're going to be sitting here taking notes, thinking about what to talk about at the end. So that's what we do. We listen, we learn together. You'll hear me come in, maybe laugh, maybe make a comment here and there. And at the end, we'll be back to talk about what we've learned as we close this episode out. So thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and start. This is Sasha Shulgin in Palenque, Mexico in 1996. Here we go.
Psychedelics, drugs, or potential tools to explore the mind.
Tools.
What motivates the researchers in this field? Psychedelics, why and how?
Interviews with Luke Sala.
Sasha Shulgin. Some call him the father of MDMA, but in fact he is one of the leading researchers in entheogens, in chemicals that change our mood, our brain. Now, what I'm interested in, Sasha, is the roots of this all. I mean, you started working this as a scientist in a laboratory with modern means, but doesn't all this searching for the alternative goes back many, many, many centuries?
Well, you have to realize what I'm searching for, which is not for altering consciousness or for having fun or for enjoying this or for discovering that. I'm looking for tools that can be used for studying the mind. And other people then will use the tools in finding out the aspects of the mental process and how it ties to the brain. But my main drive is as a tool maker, making of tools and letting other people exploit them.
But that means you have a fascination with how the mind, how the brain works.
Completely fascinated, but not the brain, the mind. The brain is now, we're in the decade of the brain. Everyone looking at neurotransmitters here and serotonin and dopamine and all these sort of things, which is a marvelous search. And indeed, they're uncovering many peculiarities of neurological connections, but many are being found in animals. And in fact, the animal is the main location for research. And I'm interested in things that affect the mental process, the function of the mind, which is not necessarily to be found in an animal. So the questions I am addressing are: how does one affect the attitude towards something, the self-image of something, the feeling of religious ecstasy or of fear and paranoia, something you can't see in a rat.
Is that true? Do you think that that's the difference between human beings and animals? That
I cannot conceive of how a rat would have a good self-image or a bad self-image. I might see how he behaves to a stimulus, or how he might retreat from an attack, or how he might be lured by some pheromone into some relationship. But a self-image, the knowledge that he is mortal and he must achieve something or other before his death, the sense that he has an ominous apprehension of something that might occur in the future, the memory of an early life experience, earlier incarnation, reincarnation. These are interesting aspects of the human mind, but they're not, that, to my knowledge, a part of the rat's.
Long time ago there was Saint Francis in Italy, and I like that he went out and preached to the animals and the birds. So there must be something.
Well, maybe he enjoyed that form of interaction. Did the birds respond well? I don't remember.
There is no order of the birds yet.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
But there is a Saint Francis.
There is a Saint Francis, and then he changed things. San Francisco, for one thing. Can you, when you go back to when you were young, what was there something that made you go for the mind?
Yes, it was an extraordinary experience with mescaline. Oh gosh, about 40 years ago, I was given in an experimental setting 350 milligrams of mescaline sulfate, and I knew intellectually what it was and what it did, but I did not know personally what it was and what it did. There were about 10 of us together, and about half of us were experimental subjects and half of the people were babysitters. And I went in it with rather an open view of what was going to happen, and I was totally dumbfounded by what occurred. I suddenly found myself into an extraordinary world, physical world around me, visual, sensory world of color, of interpretation, of motion, of form, of shape. And my first response was to say, how did this drug do this? How did 350 milligrams of a white solid produce this effect? And then I realized the drug had almost nothing to do with it. That drug allowed me to realize, express, to appreciate what was there all along. And I was totally blind to it. So what it did, it catalyzed the opening of my own viewing, and that caught my fancy. And from that point on, I've been in research in this world ever since.
Yeah, but go further back, because the fact that you were even willing to do an experiment like that must have had earlier roots. I mean, how was your parents? Were they obsessed with the mind? Was there a school that said, hey, this is...
No, I think probably immediately prior to this experiment, I had been exploring psycho-this, that changes. I had been reading everything I could upon things that were sedatives, that were narcotics, everything from vasodilators of yohimbine, which might be aphrodisiacs, to the psychedelic drugs, and the word psychedelic did not exist, but to drugs that might be involved in changing the point of view or attitude of people, things that might be in with some religious context. I was intellectually preparing myself for this event. Why was I interested at all? That would go back yet younger, when I was in my pre-adolescence, in which I found myself in a very interesting interaction with some kind of an alter me, an alter ego. I had very few, in fact, I had virtually no good friends. The few I had were either aggressive or destructive. Mm-hmm. And so I was more or less a loner. And I got deeply involved in music. I found that good retreat in that. But being in music alienated me with yet other people who were in the physical world and sports and what have you. And so I more or less pursued my own relationships with my own unconscious. And I did not realize at that time that was a potential ally, and I saw it as a not a particularly friendly component.
Could you, if you say that, could it be that you were searching for the dark depths of your mind, because the fact that other people didn't like you, you were a little bit of a loner, that made you doubt yourself, and that these substances and this research gave you an opportunity to look deeper into yourself?
Well, I did not know at that time that there was any research or any world like this out there. I had to live totally within myself. I remember the pleasures I had in being underneath a fence that was behind the house. I lived in Berkeley at that time in California, and the fence was a honeysuckle fence. and on it were these marvelous little blossoms that you could bite the end off and have a very sweet drop of fluid. And I found that was an ally in the sense that here was something that made me feel at home, and yet my neighbor and my parents owned the fence, but the path underneath it went on both sides, and I could, in essence, straddle across both worlds and use the...
You still do that,
I still do that, yeah. But I use the honeysuckle as sort of a personal palliative retreat. And it was a personal friend of mine, and I established a good relationship with that plant, and maybe that was the beginning of a relationship with plant and plant materials. Just the sweetness and the absolute trustworthiness of honeysuckle.
But so your motivations might not have been to seek the Godhead at first. You were just curious. You wanted to know why you were different and how that worked.
I don't think I'm interested in the Godhead now. I don't quite know what it is. I'm interested now in what works upstairs and why it works. Sometimes you have to disrupt something to see how it should work. Sometimes you'll come across something that is disrupted, and these may be tools to reconstruct what has been disrupted for pathological or traumatic reasons. I don't know. But you can go into the direction of trying to repair, help, be a therapist, interact with others. This is noble. This is a whole profession unto itself, not mine. What I know, in time there will be a going with tools, with therapeutic tools, to the helping of others, and my art's making those tools, and I want to use my energy that way.
Now, some people will say that the tools you made, 2CB, and you brought to the surface MDMA and many other substances, backfired. It has been used for the wrong reasons. So they see you as a bad guy because you didn't help the world. You put it into more misery.
In what I have no voice in how these things are used. My point is putting them in the medical literature, the scientific literature, and let people use it. Good heavens, people publish how to make gunpowder and isolate uranium isotopes. Mm-hmm. That makes it no less of a search how these things are, what they will do, how to obtain them for whatever use you wish to put them to. Education can be put to a terrible misuse. I've seen it done that way. Mm-hmm. Someone asked me, well, aren't there irreversible changes from drug use? There are irreversible changes from an advanced degree in the university. You're never the same person, but you've been equipped with something. How you use it, then you sort of strike a bargain with your own alter ego and perhaps your own unconscious. But to have that information allows you to use it. Not to have it robs you of that possibility. And I struck tools exactly at that point. They're there, they do this, they modify that, they change the viewing towards something. Search it out. Let other people use the tools, and they are far better equipped than I am to use them. I have no experience, nor do I particularly want to use it that way. But I want to make the tools because I can do.
Yeah, but you personally, have you felt that it worked, that these things helped at least yourself and the people that you knew good enough to get another view on the reality, to see themselves in a...
They've helped me very much. My wife very much has a good viewing of what she calls the shadow, the aspect of a person who is confronted, will not confront, but has there to confront an inner something, a beast, a shadow, a something of the person, in the Jungian sense, the unconscious of that, not the subconscious, but way down there, the beast in the belly. And that is very often looked upon by people as an absolutely frightening enemy. And hence it is suppressed, it's turned away. Maybe we can turn to do this, or escape, we'll go and work at a living over there, or we'll drink too much over there, or maybe we'll marry as we shouldn't marry but have children.
Escape,
absolutely. Rather than confront that. And to confront that is frightening, and to some people can be very destructive. Take a person who knows that beast is there. Mm-hmm.
But for you, was it destructive for you?
It was the most marvelous thing that could happen, because I found it's a damn ally. I could use it or not use it as I chose, and we in essence shook hands.
And was that an extra drive for you to go further in the world and look for other things because you think it worked for you?
This is a use of a tool that worked for me, but it's not the type of tool I'm trying to develop. I'm trying to develop tools that interfere with the more subtle aspects of the intellect, because there are many cases where this could be a therapeutic or a constructive or a beneficial approach in areas of mental illness, in areas of incomplete cognitive control, in areas of tumor or traumatic damage, to find alternate routes to integrity.
Well, there's two models there. One is that of the disorder model, and the other is the augmentation model. The disorder augmentation. The disorder model is someone is sick, has a problem, has a psychological, even a bodily function that doesn't work, and with your inventions, substances that might help, bringing back to the baseline. The other thing is to help people to become smarter. We can talk about smart drugs or substances that might give them an advantage in the world. Now take people that take a SAT test. I think you call it in America, all these tests. If he takes certain drugs, he might be able to make a better result. Is that true?
It may well be, but that is not of any interest to me. Either the repairing of what is deficient or the augmentation of what is adequate are interesting uses of these, but this is not of interest to me. If something is inadequate, repair might come from a number of the sources. I don't think necessarily the understanding of the mechanism of the mental process will lead to automatic repair of damage or augmentation of adequacy. It will allow a tool to be used to explore why it is deficient or explore how it might be augmented. I don't really believe augmentation is that difficult a task. I think that we're running at a full 3% of our capability right now. And I think with just a little bit of self-discipline or perhaps a little bit of faith in oneself, you could go from 3 to 4%. That's a big increase, and it doesn't take a drug at all.
No, you can eat better food or go take better holidays. Work it. There's many ways, but still, there's the feeling that these things we can do to ourselves have an ethical side. If people who are rich can use them and others cannot, what would happen to those who stay behind?
How is a rich person can use something that a poor person can't? I don't understand.
Well, suppose that there are drugs available or medications or substances that help you to become smarter.
All right, say there are. Is this in the interest of the people who control the availability of drugs? To have people become smarter? Is this really the power structure within our government to have people become more informed voters? Is it in the interest of politicians to have people more intelligent? Oh, really? I don't think that that's quite real. I think it's the interest of those in power to maintain that power. And one way that power is maintained is to restrict and deny and eventually eliminate drugs that would constitute competition.
Yeah, but then there's always revolutionaries like you alchemists who go seek nature, seek science, seek a way first to help themselves, to do the internal alchemical work, but then it goes out in the world, doesn't it?
True, but I don't believe, other than the satisfaction of getting this information into the public, that I'm a power seeker. Because I find that is a trap. I've seen it in other people, a trap that allows people to actually begin compromising their own principles very cleanly and very neatly for the sake of accruing power, wealth. It's the same thing. I think that the satisfaction is what lives beyond you. And indeed, that's why we have children, that's why we have families, that's why we establish relationships, and that's why some people paint art, some people write poetry, and some people make chemicals. It's a way of leaving something that is lasting and may be of value. Otherwise, with your death, you are a flame that's gone out, nothing else.
Last night I dreamed, and there was this word, the being of time, which you can interpret in many ways. The being of time. We happen to be in Mexico at the moment. The Maya people who lived around here were obsessed by things like death and time. Were they also obsessed with the substances we're talking about?
They have survived in many ways. One of my favorite questions I get asked when I come back from the southern part of Mexico is, where have the Mayans gone? And the question is, you answer it, you just go there and look, and they're all about you. They have indeed survived. They have survived most eloquently. I don't know where the Spaniards went, but the Mayans are still here. So in that level, they have achieved at least for the moment, immortality. Have they used materials such as this? Of course they have, because they are all the time searching into themselves for exactly the answer to these things. These are the tools that I have used in some ways as guides as how to design new materials for research. But rather,
you went to look what, say, the botanical stuff was out here, and used it to see what chemicals were active in there.
Completely. Here's a plant. This plant can be used for this purpose. The plant can be used for healing. The whole process of healing is a beautiful example. Here you have drugs, chemicals that are healing chemicals. They are in plants. The the ancient knowledge, wisdom of what the plants are is indeed carried from generation to generation, but a little touch. Sometimes the healing plants are used to treat illness, not in the patient, but in the physician. The physician will take the drug, will take the healing thing to be able to interpret what is wrong with the patient and be able to help the patient. A different view that comes only with the awareness that healing is a process, if you are a healer, of interaction. And
but that's so funny, because you have studied the chemical interaction, which is very defined. We talk about molecules and their active parts and what you call the dirty pictures of the chemist. And now you say, yes, but there is another thing. There's the interaction that the doctor can be the helper, but also he can be the one who takes the burden, because that's what they do.
Leap ahead to the purpose I'm after, where you develop tools that can be used in studying the human mind. The person, that will require human interaction too. And that whether the tool is used in a radioactive sample to go into the brain and go into a positron emission tomography picture to see where it goes doesn't tell you how the mind works. It tells you where the chemical goes in the mind. To understand how the mind works may take the interaction with the subject, the volunteer. It may be the researcher. It may be both. But it may be an exchange of understanding in which these chemicals merely open up doors, catalyze vehicles of expression that would not otherwise be there. These are not going to be doing things. They're going to be allowing things. Just as the plant to the medicine man in the jungle is allowed to see the definition of the illness, this is a way in which a researcher or a person who is a companion in a question is allowed to see the approach to mental process. It doesn't do things, it allows things. And that is the heart of this whole area of research.
Your next book is... We have a book called PiHKAL, and now there's going to be a book called TiHKAL, which is about a different class of chemical.
It's the area of these mental catalytic, so-called psychedelic or psychoactive materials. PiHKAL is for phenethylamines, which is about half of the psychedelic scene. The other book is about tryptamines, which is, in essence, the other side of the coin, is the rest of the picture. The two members of these two classes probably constitute about 95% of all psychoactive drugs.
Now, in the first book, there was a very personal account of your coming to terms with these things. It was more of an adventure on how you invented these things, or found them. Is TiHKAL going to have that personal aspect too?
It'll have personal aspect, but both Ann and I have covered this question already of how we got started, how we are at peace with this, and how we have formed our own relationship. Now, what have we done with it? Where have we been going with it, and where might we go with it? So that aspect will be kind of a fictionalized autobiography as well. And then the second half of the book, again, will be, as in the first book, descriptions of the drugs involved.
For the people that really want to know, what I think people really want to know, are you happy? Because you're what's your age now?
71.
You fly around the world, speak at all kinds of conferences, do work. You're still in the laboratory. You've had some problems with the law there they didn't allow you to do some research, but you're still very active. Mm-hmm. All this work has done you good?
I could not be happier.
Thank you, Sasha.
Okay. That was one section of this interview. I think there's more.
There are chemicals that are pheromones to insects, which come from plants. That the pheromone, for example, if it comes from a
Okay, it looks like these are some outtakes here.
moves to early in the
But
day,
then
it's a
it'll
long optical isomer, it will turn
circle
away,
back, I have a feeling.
mating half of the other insect. But the insect will then come at the right time of day to pick up the pollen at the right time to take the other. Chemistry, weird pheromone, weird this, and without one, you don't have the other.
This interview took place in Palenque, in the Mexican state of Chiapas, and a place where magic mushrooms can be found in the fields. But the same goes for many places in Mexico, and in the old days there was probably a cult around magic mushrooms or other psychedelic substances. Sasha Shulgin is probably the most renowned expert in the world on synthetic drugs. Chemical compounds that have effects that resemble those of the magic mushrooms or other substances from the past, like the ergot, or some substances that people think that the Aztecs used in their time a few thousand years ago. Sasha Shulgin researched most into psychedelic drugs and has written 2 books. One of them is called PiHKAL, the people who are interested in phenylamphetamines, and his latest book is called TiHKAL, and it's about tryptamines. Tryptamines like DMT, one of the substances in magic mushrooms, or psilocybin. But DMT comes back in many, many substances from the jungle, like the ayahuasca from South America. Alexander Shulgin and his wife have done chemical research, but also therapy, group therapy, individual sessions with many, many people based on the substances that they have found. And as Alexander Shulgin has said, he has used all the compounds that he found, invented, made. A truly remarkable man who can be seen as the father of ecstasy, although that's the one chemical compound he hasn't actually synthesized first. But he made many, many others, like 2CB, PCP, and many, many of these so-called designer drugs, synthetic drugs, as they're known. The drugs of the disco scene, although that is certainly not what Alexander Shulgin intended. He made those drugs, he researched into strange substances, strange combinations, strange compounds, in order to know more about the mind.
Money states. It is a political interesting point of view of in Mexico, as almost all the marijuana is raised by the army. What is the size of the industry that is the war on drugs? Not how much money is involved. See, how big is that industry?
Prisons and the fastest growing.
Yeah.
It's an enormous business.
It's probably between $300 and $500 billion.
So there's no reason to stop it.
Who benefits? The State Department can no longer enter Spain with a little muscle and do this and do that. No.
Yeah, Dennis Perron said that the effect of his work would be that the price of marijuana would go down, and I thought, Jesus, that is maybe not the wisest thing to say, because que bono, who has an interest in lowering the prices of marijuana? There's such a...
I mean, Dixie cups make cups routinely to sell for urine tests. A Hewlett-Packard is back-ordered on GCMSs at $50,000 a piece, providing these instruments for people who want to confirm urine tests of people who want to work for the gas company but can't work for the gas company unless they pee in a cup every 3 weeks. This is a big business. Who benefits by wiping out the Constitution, which has been about 30% stripped of its meaning because of the war on drugs? It used to be you were secure in your house. You may now be entered by a policeman who's acting in good faith, and I have yet to see a policeman who doesn't act in good faith, without a warrant. If in good faith he thinks there may be a drug crime committed.
And you have salt on your kitchen table, that is part of...
If in good faith he believes there is some crime associated with your car, he may take your car without even arresting or bringing a charge. Your car's gone. And he keeps it without accounting it. There's no auditing.
Now there was the feeling that, a nation always needs a war. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now we had a war on drugs, and there was the hope that there would be, or the hope, there was the idea that there would be a thing called the war on cyberspace. Yeah, the electronic frontier, the electronic hypeway, I think Max Moore called it. Now they're finding out it doesn't work. People don't want this new expansion. Would they revert to the war on drugs? Would they go back with the government, instead of spending money now on the electronic highway, go back to fighting drugs?
They've never left fighting drugs. That's not
well.
bad.
People say that under Clinton there was a little bit of a less of a thing.
Oh, I missed it.
Yes, you think it went on as strong as before?
This is the only election I know of in which a Republican ran against a Republican. No, tell me, Clinton to win as the things. He says every teenager, we're going to have this McCafferty figure a way we can get this into law and so forth. Every teenager who applies for a driving license shall take a drug test. You can deny him the license? But are you going to deny 3 out of every 100 teenagers a driver's license because your tests are mediocre? What are you going to do with the people who fail? Tell them to come back in 6 months? They never answer these questions. If you realize that morphine has now been shown to be a natural component of the brain, beside bagels giving you opium poppies things, you drive down on a bus in the back of a bus going from here over to Villahermosa, and that pot smoking back makes you positive urine marijuana for the next 3 days. That's not of your doing, but you're positive, and 3 out of every 100 are false anyway. You're condemning.
Why are making people this nearly fascist, frightening society? It's not good for our health.
No, it's not good for our health. It's not good for the Constitution because it is a control. Why do people form police states? I lost the thread. Why were the national movements in Germany in the late 30s what they were? To cleanse and make the society clean and homogeneous and lead to the Fourth Reich and the better state? Why? Because jolly people got their jollies out of it. They were in power and they could run it. And we have exactly the same thing in the United States. We have whole bodies of elite who are really doing a lot of controlling. They're not elected and they're not even known publicly. You have the General Service Administration. You have hosts of advisors into the military and in the executive who are not publicly known figures.
Why is it that the pollution that is outside in the world and that we know has also really invaded our political system then?
When was it free of it?
The pollution.
I know, but we were never free of it. We've always had a form of pollution in the real
world and in the virtual world. Yeah.
That is the way of politics. The way of the warriors, in the other sense.
Not a nice way. Thank you, Sasha. And who knows what you will find in the future. Because Sasha Shulgin is by no way finished with his research. His research in what a free mind can find.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Luke Sala. Interesting guy. It's just a rare recording. That's why I felt like it was beneficial to listen to that together, because you got to hear a lot of Sasha Shulgin's personality. It really came through. He talked really fast and he had a lot of dense ideas, a density of ideas. So it was really interesting to get his personality in that way. And the interviewer asked good enough questions to really stimulate his thinking. And it seemed like Sasha was being very generous as well in how he guided the conversation, just to really drive home points in a really clear and digestible way, a way that was easy to process. Brynn, what did you think?
Yeah, actually, I thought it was, his personality is great. I thought that was, came through very clearly in the interview, which was cool. Some of the just like little things that he said, like anything can be misused, including a college degree. You know, I've seen it happen, or
Right.
different things like that. Yeah, a couple cool points, just talking about healing being a process of interaction and how it's maybe the healer that takes that on. Maybe the healer, you know, takes the substance or goes into meditation in order to figure out, you know, what's going on, not just plying the patient with some substance to just make their symptoms go away. It's very different than the way things are done in our current pharmaceutical medical model. So there's that stuck out to me. And then also, just as a plant person, I always notice people's plant stories, and there's always that one plant that starts your journey.
And what was that plant? I remember
it was the honeysuckle.
The honeysuckle. I was going to ask you about that. What are the esoteric meanings of the honeysuckle?
Honeysuckle is one of my childhood favorites as well. And it has a little thing at the end, and you pull it off and you get this one beautiful sweet drop of nectar. So honeysuckle is often used as a flower essence, and I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head what specific use that is for, but it is definitely used on the etheric body and for, you know, emotional and psychic support of the system. I mean, of the human, excuse me, not the system. So anyway, I just thought that was sweet. And the way that he said that honeysuckle I wrote it down because it was so cool. The sweetness and trustworthiness of the plant world. And that just like, that's so beautiful because that's how it is. And the intelligence and the pure love coming from the plant community, and it pulls people in, and that, pulled him in as a child. He's walking in this little secret walkway, which as a child, I'm sure is much bigger than an adult would notice it, and getting these sweet drops of nectar. And to him, that entrusted the knowledge of the plant kingdom to him.
It tapped him into plant consciousness.
Yes, absolutely. Really, and he was able to carry that through his life. And like that one crystalline moment could have been the start of his entire life works.
And he said he was a tool maker, which I thought that was interesting, that he wanted other people to use. He just knew how to create the tools, which I thought was really cool. And he did 250. And like Luke Sala was saying, he tried them all. So, wow, what an incredible run.
Yeah, that would be interesting to read about.
And he also talked about how it didn't really matter the amount or the substance. It really just was about unlocking where you can go once you allow yourself to get there. It allowed things to happen. It didn't make things happen.
Right. He said that it wasn't, how did this drug do this? That it wasn't, that the drug did nothing at all. It was more that it allowed something to open up inside him that had been there all along.
It allowed you to make the choice to shift your frequency, and then more information would come in. You'd have those incredible experiences. And really, he cataloged those experiences in a method that he called the Shulgin scale. And it described how you could process your different types of psychedelic experiences, or really just the different intensity levels. And that's the next video that we're going to listen to. We're going to listen to him later in his life talk about, with his wife, the Shulgin scale. It's a really interesting, sweet video. And you can tell that it's 20 something years later in his voice, but he's still there. Spirit's the same. The shell went through its biological processes, but the spirit's the same, and he's blessing us with this information. So here we go. Anne and Sasha Shulgin describe the Shulgin scale.
But if you could explain your plus system, plus and minus system, because you don't just take a little amount, you measure that tiny amount exactly when you take it. And the Shulgin scale is now being used pretty widely, the plus and minus. And explain
the wide use of the Shulgin scale is corrupted by the fact of the deterioration of Shulgin memory. I can't remember. If I take a little bit of something, no, not a little bit. It's not how much you take. It's what you turn on to. Okay. No action. Zero. That's minus.
Minus is basically no effect.
No effect. No.
Right. Yeah.
Then you do. No, that's not. Not sure. No.
That's the plus minus.
That's plus minus. Yeah.
Which means you think maybe there's something, and then it turns out not to be.
Turns not to be. You're not sure. Uncertain. Then you have, of course, the straightforward. That's interesting. I probably shouldn't go out and drive. I have to go downtown to get some portraits at the store. But you drive, you're perfectly fine, but you're sparking just that little bit.
Yeah.
Plus
one. Right.
Then you get the plus two.
Which again, you don't take any amount of the new drug except maybe every 2 or 3 days.
Even twice a week at most.
Yeah. Okay. So you go up very, very slowly, and then if you get to plus one, then you go up even more slowly because you've got effect.
Because plus two is where you are. This is really going somewhere.
No driving.
No driving. And you're not quite certain about this and that. I don't know. Did you record the time when we started? I've
Right,
seen for lost my.
yeah.
I don't know that's supposed to.
Plus two is you definitely, excuse me, you definitely know there's an effect, and you can begin to tell. You can pretty much tell what the nature of the effect is.
Right. Yes, and you can write it down. This.
Yeah.
Event. Plus 3. I'm not going to drive that car.
No.
No, absolutely. I'll sit right here and enjoy what's going on. Ooh, it's interesting. But I never saw those things on a ceiling before. Did you ever see those up there? Yeah, that's plus 3.
You're no longer daring to interact with the outside world because it just wouldn't be safe.
Absolutely.
Time may be distorted or changed. Space might be distorted. But what you've got is pretty much the full effect.
And then you have the problem of the degradations into small increments and then the extraordinary extreme. Let's take one at a time. Degrades into small increments. What is plus 2.4?
Well, that's
2.5, a little over 2.5, not quite 2 3/4.
not quite 3. Yeah.
Yeah. These are little things in there. They start playing games with little numbers. Then you have the situation. If you're plus 3, you're totally stoned. You're out. You're right there.
Well, I don't know if I'd use the word stoned, but yeah, okay, stoned.
Then you have what I call plus 4.
Yeah,
There's no way of putting a number to it.
that's very
You
unusual.
are out of it. I've only had it twice in my life.
Really.
Yeah, you're out of it. You're really. Ooh, look at that funny bird flying down here. Go away. The bird goes away. You have control over everything around you.
Power.
Complete power, and that's good for. That's fun for an hour or 2 or 3. Then you begin saying, what if this were to last forever?
Yes.
Oh my God. You don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I'm just as soon get out of this. And meanwhile, the animals run away from you and everything's gone. The telephone rings and you say, I don't answer the phone stops ringing. You have all that kind of control.
Yeah. Oh, you think you do?
You think you do. Well, I do.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
You have had, right.
You can stop a phone from ringing by saying stop, and it stops.
Well, in other words, if you have psychic abilities or ESP, they can flower in a plus 4, whereas they may not in a plus 3.
Well, I tell you, I do not like plus 4s particularly.
Really?
Because I can't get out of them.
Well, you have so far.
Yeah, only twice.
Yeah, but
Could I still be in? I'm not sure.
right.
Go ahead.
But the plus 4 actually shouldn't even be in the plus scale
It's not the
because
plus
it's
scale.
completely
It's out of this world and something.
and it doesn't seem to have any real connection with the particular drug.
No.
It's
Use the same
independent.
drug again 3 weeks later.
Yeah,
Not there.
No such thing. It's if you want to get really serious about it, plus 4 is a state of grace. You described it as such.
Okay.
You are really in the spiritual world, and it's a samadhi state. The Indians would use the word
Samadhi?
Samadhi.
That brings up 3 limericks.
No, don't. You lifted the bag of cement just by thoughts.
That's right. And turned upside down. I
Yeah.
remember that, yeah.
Right.
This bag of cement was upside down in the rain or something like that.
Yeah.
So I said turn over, and it turned over.
Yeah. And the very interesting thing is how many of these concepts that happen like that, whether they actually happen or whether one thinks they happen. And that would be a very interesting thing to get up.
Apart.
Yes, exactly.
They actually happen. You think they happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah. So there's no way of telling this apart. No.
Well, what changes is the usual assumption. Most of us, whether we admit to it or not, assume that we can't move objects at a distance with our thoughts. I mean, we like to talk about telepathy and kinetics and what is telekinesis. That's right. But if it actually happened while you're sitting in the doctor's office, waiting to be seen, if you could actually move that object, you'd be panicked. But in this state, you know you can, and therefore you do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You feel perfectly in tune.
Absolutely, yeah. You're in tune. And those, you've had only 2?
Twice.
Really?
And probably much nearer sometimes, around the edges, flirting with that area.
I've never found a fraction between +3 and +4.
Right. Right.
+4 is by itself. It's a different world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And not a particularly nice one in some ways. You can't get out of it.
but you think maybe you're not going to be able to get out of it, but I think you know that you will.
Yeah.
At the time, you can worry that you won't get out of it, can't you?
Yeah.
It has that feeling of eternity.
But a certain amount of experience was a strange thing, because even though you know you're going to get out of it, one of the things that comes to you when you're in that state is that you know that some part of you is always in that state. It's just you're not consciously aware of it.
Yes.
But also, a +4 not only has nothing to do with a particular drug, it is not necessarily connected with taking a drug.
It can come spontaneously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dang, Sasha Shulgin, 1925 to 2014. And so we're going to continue, same era, same interview, and a different section, again at the tail end of his life. I loved that scale, the Shulgin scale, and we're just going to listen to them talk a little bit about mescaline and MDMA, and then we'll recap it after that. Here we go.
I know the first real psychedelic experience I had was the peyote, and that definitely was.
Right.
No question. But there was so much packed into that one experience that when I met Sasha many years later, I told him very firmly that I didn't believe that anyone should take a psychedelic more often than once every 6 years.
6 years.
And he said 6 years. Because it'd been 6 years since this had happened, and I was still processing all the things that had happened.
Right.
Just incredible. So I think he talked me out of that. He said, I don't think you have to wait that long. Oh, okay.
Well, interestingly, I took my first psychedelic experience about the same time she did. We had never met until a couple of decades later.
Oh, at the same time?
Almost the same time.
No, you had your first psychedelic experience was, it wasn't really psychedelic. It was in the Navy.
No, that was another word entirely.
Yeah, but weren't you?
No, I took mescaline.
Really?
Yeah, you took peyote.
I took peyote.
And I took mescaline. And at a very similar time, I'd never had this before, and my experience was totally different from yours.
Yeah.
I had this in material, and I was told these were things that turned you on. These are things that made you sparkle, things that made you have imagination.
Who told you that? Do you remember?
It's in the literature.
Oh, well, okay. Right. Yeah.
And I took a reasonably good stout dose of mescaline, and I felt this thing coming on, and what I did not get into a state. I began remembering my earlier life.
Oh. And when you were a child?
Yeah, when I was a child.
Yeah.
And I relived my life as a child. And then I realized I saw this, I understood that, I was aware of the yonder.
Right, yeah.
But they all made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And where was I at that time? I have no idea.
What state were you in?
Stone.
No, yeah, but you mean by? Do you mean by where were you? You don't mean physically.
No. We're mentally.
Yeah, right. You in the child's world.
Back in there, and I go back in this area, and I go back into my early childhood.
Yeah.
Normally with no idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
And then I came out of this, I said, that was the most fascinating experience I've ever had. It allowed me memory of my early world, I never had. So I said, this is a strange chemical.
Yeah.
And so it's mescaline. Let's try it again. So about 2 weeks later, so I took another thing and went back in the same sort of thing. It didn't have effect on me. It gave me memories of my childhood, and I relived my childhood.
Yeah.
I had a little bit left over in the glass, and they said, well, why don't you just finish it up? Leave it alone. This is precious. Had this bottle of stuff that's called mescaline.
Yeah.
Go away. That went on the
Special shelf.
Yeah. And then once I said, if that is good, what do you put a methyl group up here? Change it a little bit. Move it around a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I did. I made, I think, alpha ethyl, I forget what it was. No, it's a N-ethyl homolog of mescaline.
What would it be called otherwise?
MEM. Is there an MEM?
Oh, yeah. I think
Okay,
so.
MEM.
Right.
It's the first modification of mescaline I made.
Uh-huh.
Made it beautiful solids, about the same melting point, a little bit lower melting point.
Yeah.
And it was all pure. I got good microanalysis on it. So I said, I'll take the same amount of this and see if it goes the same place.
Whoa.
I took the same amount of it. I worked up to it a little bit, but same
good.
amount. When I got up there, I went gently. Got up there, and fantastic. Same funny world, but rather than putting things in its precious place, I tore it apart to see what's inside of it.
Oh, that's not the flower thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
what?
interesting.
You tore it apart?
Well, there was a flower. There was
Flower,
a
yes.
rose.
I saw it's beautiful on the what do you call those things in front of the Davenport?
On mescaline, you
Gorgeous
couldn't
flower,
touch it.
and it was a treasure of a flower, and it had colors and shades and all that sort of thing, and for some reason I wanted to maybe see if it opened up to. No, I wasn't going to touch it. Leave it alone. It's precious. But with the methyl homolog, I said, this beautiful flower. I tore it apart, see what's inside of it. Complete change of attitude toward the unknown.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, if you can take one carbon atom and add to that thing, completely change the nature of action, there must be a million things you can do with it.
And there were.
And there were. And that got me off my world. But I got over in the lab and I found if you added methyl ethyl, let's add a propyl group, let's add an amyl group, let's put things over here, let's move things around that way.
Yeah.
So I took that simple little molecule of mescaline and I mucked around that you would not believe. added this way to it.
Yeah.
And then everything was new. Everything was new. So most of it unpredictable, totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
But it was discovery, every single thing.
Yes, right.
Then I said, well, I'm playing around this silly little molecule. Let's put a group over there, and a whole new thing. You go over here, no activity at all.
Yeah.
So you find different places in the molecule. You add things, take things away.
And then you discovered the magical 4 position or
the
something.
4 positions I discovered.
Yeah.
That in the mescaline world controlled everything. And so I put an ethyl group up there. Wow, a whole new world of things to discover.
The DOM and DOI.
Yeah, all these things.
DOB.
Well, DOM was named for the fact that there's a term in chemistry known as DES, meaning get rid of it.
Desoxy.
And I knew mescaline's activity. So I took the methoxy group up here in mescaline and took away the oxygen. So it's just a methyl group up there. New area entirely.
Yeah.
So since I took the oxygen away, I caused a desoxymescaline.
Yeah.
So DOM.
DOM, right.
Oh, a whole new world opened up.
That's the weekend stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
And how much did that change it from?
It made it a little more potent and gave me a whole new world of discovery.
Yeah, that you could play with the. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, wonderful fun.
The DO series, DOI, DOB, DOM, DOC. Even.
Yeah, DOC made them all.
And they're all long. I mean,
they're longer.
36 hours.
Gosh.
You go to sleep and you wake up and you're still on.
But the D is for desoxy.
Right.
Then you had the 2CB.
Yeah.
I said, if all these marvelous desoxy things are in there, amphetamine, homologs and such, were active. Let us go back to the phenethylamine underneath it, get back toward where originally it was. And then you have since phenethylamine has 2 carbons, I call them 2C. M for mescaline, B for bromo, C for chloro, all that kind of thing. A whole new area of psychedelics, just right there.
Right.
And they're fun to make, they're different, you have to be sure you're making the right thing.
Yeah.
And everyone is new and different.
Amazing. And this is just by changing the different connections.
Moving things around.
Amazing. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
And how do you actually do that? How do you change all the molecules around it?
By going to the laboratory and starting from scratch and building a whole new molecule with a new structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't move things on molecules.
You
Put things on new molecules that have never been there before.
Okay.
Right.
And everything new.
Yeah. And how do you do that? You do it by mixing things together so they coagulate.
Now, I want to get into chemistry, synthesis, and difficulties in the laboratory. This would be another 22 hours.
The first thing you do is you go to the university and enroll in a class in chemistry.
Yeah.
And ignore what they teach you the way and have the fun with it.
I was just wondering what the story actually was. How did you reinvent MDMA, and how did it, from that point, become this mass culture drug?
I didn't reinvent it. It was invented about 1912 or something or other.
You're actually the godfather.
The Godfather.
Okay, fine,
The Godfather.
The material was made in, I think, 1912, or it was patented in 1914. A Merck company in Germany. And it was patented as an intermediate in making a compound. This is the drug they wanted to sell.
Right.
So in the course of making it, they went to boom, 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 boom. And the first boom happened to be MDMA, because it was an intermediate in the synthesis. They didn't look at it pharmacologically. Totally unknown. But it was synthesized before World War I.
What for?
As an intermediate in making something that was killed insects or something.
Okay.
And it was not in the literature again for another decade or two. And then someone began a study, I can't remember when, where roughly in the 1950s or 60s or something, of materials that are closely related to these psychedelics. And MDMA was closely related. And it was looked into there and didn't have any psychedelic action in their tests. And there was another a few years, I forget the details of the chronology, but it was up until about 1980 or so that attention was directed to MDMA as an intermediate. And people in Europe and also some there, and also in the middle of the country, I think it was Illinois and perhaps in the a little west of there, Kansas or something, we're looking at this as an interesting stimulant. And I heard about this in 1950, 1970, 1980 something. And they were trying it in themselves. And I was curious because I had tried a number of N-methylated amphetamines and stimulants. None of them were active. So I didn't believe this could be active. So I made some material. This was after it had been looked at them and not published. And by golly, it's a stimulant with a fair amount of psychedelic action. So I put it into the literature as such. That's my whole art form.
Right.
Is finding things that are active, verifying they're active, making sure of it, publishing it, and get on to something else.
Yeah.
I do not want to capitalize.
Beautiful artwork.
Yeah. And so what happened after that? How did it become so immensely popular?
It caught on like fancy for some reason. It was a group, I guess it was in Texas, was it?
No, before that, Leo Zeff.
Leo Zeff did it.
He gave it to Leo.
A friend of mine, Leo Zeff, he's in his early 70s or something or other. And he'd done a lot of work with psychedelic drugs. And he and I worked very closely together. I'd make materials for him. He'd give me the reports back and forth.
A psychotherapist. A psychotherapist.
He was a psychologist.
Psychologist.
Yeah.
Superb. And then he retired in 1970 something.
Was ready to retire.
Ready to retire. And I found this MDMA thing, so I gave it to him. I said, I'm nothing new. I'm tired. Try it. And he tried it. Boy, he came out of retirement like that. He got it through all of his patients, all his subjects, all his physicians he's working with. And he was probably responsible for its promotion to it. Somewhere in the number 4,000.
4,000.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Funny enough, I know a film producer who's a very terribly successful, one of the top ones, very hard-hitting film producer. And he was went for therapy with him and was given MDMA.
Yeah.
And then he started a school for 500 untouchable children in India, which he completely runs and finances. And I mean, he had a complete
personality
change,
transformation.
Yeah. Sorry, let me interrupt.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I got it. It triggered his fascination. He fell in love with it, spread it around the world. And that was the start of the N-methyls. No N-methyls existed before that.
Yes.
I had made about half a dozen of them, not active.
Yeah.
But this particular one, the N-methylation, was a different compound. Yeah. And so I got back in there and began making other N-methyl things here and there, and some of them were active, some were not.
Wow, what a history. It just kind of cut off there. Their rare recordings is kind of put together. I just really want you to grasp who Sasha Shulgin was and his wonderful wife, Anne, of course, and what his contribution was. There's a little line up here at the end of this video. It says, Sasha was one of the great givers to humanity, and his legacy lives on as a beloved friend and master alchemist who, like Albert Hofmann, has contributed vastly to human happiness and to our understanding of the fuller potential of the human mind. And I have to agree. I love his work. I love his vibes. That's why I had to integrate him into the show. He left this dimension right in 2014. So I had to figure out how to do one episode with Sasha Shulgin with these rare recordings. Hopefully it's cohesive enough to where we picked up some interesting information. I feel like it's just there. You know, you listen to it, you get some psychedelic history. Maybe you can delve into his books, PiHKAL and TiHKAL. Incredible books. Brynn, what did you think of those little wrap-up videos?
I thought they were great. I loved him talking with his wife and just their rapport with each other, and the Shulgin scale, how they described each one. He's a funny guy.
I've never had a +4. Have you ever had a +4?
I feel like I have for about 15 minutes where
you could control reality.
Oh, I guess not so much that. No, but I guess I felt like it was so in the sense where it was different than a 0 to 3. It was a totally different plane. Like I wasn't on Earth anymore.
Is this a DMT experience you had?
Correct. I
would have to say that would be that way just based on how you described it. Yeah, I mean, I guess that could be a 3.672.
I didn't try to control anything. I mean, that's the other thing, though. It was, so I was just absorbing what was happening. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to, do this thing. My mind I wasn't thinking about controlling anything. I was just there. So anyway, but I thought that was funny how he's like, oh, am I okay? No, I shouldn't drive. Well, actually, yeah, I got to go out to the store. And that kind of moment of like
the sparkleness.
That was funny. So yeah, interesting thought about the scale, and interesting for therapy use as well. If people are kind of trying to gauge, if you're working with someone in that realm and trying to sort of gauge.
Yeah, someone that's never really had underground psychedelics or black market psychedelics. It's just people that want it from their therapist, or as it becomes legal, especially here in Oregon, it's already decriminalized, but as it becomes even more legal, they'll want a way to process it in order to gauge and really kind of have a foothold or have a hold on their experience so they can process it in the right way so it doesn't get too out of control, even though sometimes those out of control experiences are where the magic happens.
Right, or where it was supposed to go. I just, I don't think that his scale was intended for, like, it's a scale and it's loose. There's 3.5 and there's a 1.2, and it's just sort of a gauge for yourself as you're exploring. But I hope it does. I was just speaking with someone the other day about this, that as things become used for therapy, whether they're mushrooms or MDMA or whatnot, that we don't lose sight of the spiritual aspect and the entheogen quality of that it's opening yourself up to the greater mystery, and that it doesn't all become compartmentalized and, well, you're number 3 and so we're going to put you in this category, and then that's the insurance code number 12, and that, you know what I mean? Like we got to be, I hope, mindful of that as we bring this into the therapeutic and legal realm.
Oh, definitely. And interesting synchronicity is that we listened to that first interview from 1996, and in 2021 Sasha Shulgin would have been 96 if he was still with us in his physical body. Little synchronicity there.
There you go.
And I loved hearing the history of MDMA. And this guy has contributed a lot. Holy cow. And like I said, he's a little undercover. It's just one more person I wanted you to know about. That's why we're doing this episode. I'm really glad you're here, Brynn. What did you think? Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was great. I just, one more thing. Listening to him talk about this, like, you just took this molecule and you put it over here and you took that molecule.
That was crazy.
And he was like, and then he just did this. And then I thought, wow, if I just move that one carbon, then there's like hundreds of things I could do. And then he's kind of laughing. He's like, how is that really fun to make? And you're just thinking of this,
he
like,
was such an
it's
alchemist.
like an elf or something, just like in there with all of these, like, you got to be the kind of person that can see beyond, like, the table and the chair, like to be able to see that invisible world and its inner workings. It's pretty fascinating
what kind of
rare
equipment do you use to add atoms to molecules?
I think a lot of it is flasks and boiling water and different,
just like old times,
elements.
huh?
Like they called him. I mean, really, that does all stem
just
from
like
alchemy.
Old times.
Paracelsus might know. I don't know.
Well, they're alchemizing up in the next phase of existence, as we will all be one day. But Brynn, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was awesome.
I do want to tell people to go to Blue Cobra CBD one more time and get your free bottle of Blue Cobra CBD oil, valued at $39.95. Blue Cobra CBD at gmail.com. And everyone, we'll see you next week. Midnight on Earth.